Tesla China sales sag, Fisker touts Cybertruck killer, NIKOLA'S C-suite revolving door, and more. Biggest EV stories of the week.
One of the things that stood out to me in your study, where you say resistance to EVs is becoming even more entrenched, particularly around low-income shoppers. What's happening there? Because so much of the discussion around EVs has been the inequality, about the affordability, and that it is the higher end consumers who have charging networks around them that have benefited the most.
All that and more, so let's get to it. Even in the pre-market, the volatility remains constant. And by constant, I mean wonky as f***. Tesla is up about 0.5%. We'll see how long that lasts and if the gains can continue. Tesla China sales sag, Fisker touts Cybertruck killer, NIKOLA'S C-suite revolving door, and more. Biggest EV stories of the week. Electric vehicle stocks had a mixed outing in the week that ended on August 4th, with the broader market volatility and company-specific catalysts dictating sentiment. Market leader Tesla ended the week lower as it retreated alongside its tech peers amid macro concerns. Here are the key events that happened in the EV space during the week. Tesla China sales, class action lawsuit, India plans, and more. By this metric, you would think Tesla had a busy week, but yeah, business as usual. The volatility in Tesla's China sales continued, as data released by the China Passenger Car Association showed that July sales came in at 64,285 units, down 31% month-over-month year-over-year performance. However, showed 128% growth. Regardless of the data that the China Passenger Car Association releases regarding Tesla vehicles and registrations, note that the Shanghai plant is Tesla's major export hub. They're even exporting to Canada now. It stands to reason that the registration data in China will fluctuate as necessary, because there will be a period where Tesla is shipping those cars elsewhere. Try not to read too much into the tea leaves there. Meanwhile, Warren Buffett-backed BYD reported pure battery EV sales of 134,783 units in July, up from 128,179 units in June. After a report suggested Tesla had exaggerated claims regarding the range of its vehicles, 3 Tesla owners filed a class action lawsuit this week seeking redress for their grievance. May Santa deliver you a lump of coal this year. Tesla is progressing swiftly with its India plans, as reports said the company had leased an office space near Mumbai, the country's financial capital. This assumes importance, as Chinese EV startups have not found much success with their attempts to enter India, which is touted to have huge untapped potential. Yeah, especially when I think about the next gen vehicle. So much opportunity. Elon Musk-led company was also hit with a recall this week, as it recalled 271 Model S and X vehicles in China due to issues with the vehicle's seatbelts and camera installation. I suppose it's par for the course when you're dealing with complex manufactured items. An analyst pointed out this week that used Tesla car prices fell to a record low, and argued that the company should give up its strategy of cutting prices to push volume. Well, I got one question for that analyst. Does Tesla come to your job and slap the broom out of your hand? I don't think so. FISKER'S ambitious product roadmap. About 4 months after Fisker began deliveries of its first EV, the company showcased its future product portfolio at its Product Vision Day, held in Huntington Beach, California. It included a Fisker Ocean SUV with a Force E off-road package, a Fisker Ronin sports car, a Fisker Pear low-end EV, and a Fisker Alaska EV pickup truck. Not a bad potential lineup. Now let's see if they can execute. The Alaska would be the world's lightest EV pickup truck with a projected range of 230 to 340 miles. The company expects to begin deliveries in 2025 and hinted at a starting price of $45,400 before incentives. If they can do that and keep positive margins, I like Fisker's outlook. Big question is, can they do it? Nikola names new CEO. Struggling hydrogen and electric truck maker Nikola woes continued, with the company announcing its 4th CEO transition in as many years. The company said former General Motors executive Stephen Gursky would immediately take over for Michael Loeffler. The company said Loeffler had opted to leave due to a family health issue. The announcement came a day after the company shareholders had approved a proposal to allow the company to issue additional shares. Nikola's shares, which have been marked by buying interest, especially from the retail crowd, pulled back over 26% Friday and yet finished higher for the week. The company also said it would bolster EV technology development in China. It plans to use auto parts suppliers Denso and Aisin to ramp up the powertrain development and 3 joint venture partners, namely FAW Group, Guangzhou Automobile Group, and BYD, for local design and small cockpits development. GM EVgo brisk with charger installations. The GM EVgo Duo has surpassed 1,000 installations of fast charging stalls and is well on its way to its goal of installing 3,250 DC fast charging stalls in major metro markets. Underlining the boom in the charging business, EVgo reported the week better than expected second quarter results. It will be quality, not quantity, that these EVgo GM chargers will be judged. Toyota seeks dominance in China. China is the world's second biggest auto market, and the country boasts a thriving EV startup ecosystem. Toyota, which is the world's biggest automaker by volume, said this week it wants to catch up with the domestic rivals in China. Color me skeptical, but you can one hand and wish in another and see which one fills up faster. A lot of pretty words coming out of Japan, especially from Toyota. But I need to see some execution out of them if they're going to make this transition and survive the decade.
Despite all the talk about maybe a slowdown in EVs, if you look at the last quarter, there were record sales, right? I mean, up more than 50% year on year. We're talking about roughly 8% of the market. The new car sales in the market are made up of EVs. So my question to you is, how much of that remaining 90+% is actually in play? How many drivers are actually still considering buying EV?
Oh, that's a good question. I would imagine that it's always tough to sort of predict the future. But EVs are certainly very quickly addressing many of the consumer issues that they have with it. So we're seeing concerns about affordability decrease. We're seeing concerns about range decrease, and then the charging infrastructure. So, it's always difficult to predict when sort of full adoption will happen, but I don't want to call them inevitable, but many consumers are really starting to think that this is a type of vehicle that's going to fit into their lifestyle.
Looking on screen now, consumer reasons not to buy an EV. The primary reason is price. Well, considering the macroeconomic conditions, no surprise there. When you're talking about range and charging access in public, I figured those two numbers would be swapped. Now, don't get me wrong. Back in 2020, I had significant range anxiety, but that was 3 years ago. Take it from me, folks, unless you're an anomaly and you're driving over 200 miles a day, range is not an issue for you. Even the shit of EVs will get you where you need to go on a daily basis. Now, the charging access in public, if you're not with a Tesla, that can be quite a headache. But with these new Tesla charging partnerships, and as we heard earlier, GM and EVgo trying to improve the network, that public charging concern should be much lower than it is anyway.
So let's talk about those two key things you point out. It's the price, and then there's the range. What's the bigger hurdle for those who are considering potentially looking into EVs right now?
So it's always been price. We've been running this survey annually since 2019. We took 2020 off because of the pandemic, but we've always seen the top 3 concerns, and those are in order: price, concerns about range, and then where people are going to charge them. However, the number of people concerned about price is decreasing. That is becoming less of a concern in the years we've been doing this survey. It dropped from, it was 42% of respondents this year said that was a concern. Last year was 49%, and that's just in a year. So we are definitely seeing that ease considerably and in a nice timeline.
On the pricing, how much of that ease has to do with the incentives that have taken shape? And we talk a lot about the federal incentives, roughly $7,500 for new cars. But you add the state incentives, depending on where you live, that's got to really slash the price of an EV right off the top, right?
It can, and it certainly makes it certainly more attractive. I will say it's a bit of a mixed bag right now. The Inflation Reduction Act changed which vehicles were eligible for the full federal tax rebate. And so some vehicles are now on that list that were not previously, but it also took some other brands off. And it sort of depended on sort of twofold, where the vehicle was manufactured and where the battery is sourcing its materials. So I know Hyundai and Kia are out with a great lineup of plug-in hybrid and then fully electric vehicles. Most of those vehicles are now ineligible for the short term if you buy it. There is some loopholes there for leasing, but so there was it was a mixed bag as far as which vehicles became more affordable. But yeah, certainly, I'm from California. You could take, if you're eligible in terms of your income and the vehicle is eligible, it can knock $10,000 off the price of one of these EVs, and that's pretty significant.
David, one of the things that stood out to me in your study where you say resistance to EVs is becoming even more entrenched, particularly around low-income shoppers. What's happening there? Because so much of the discussion around EVs has been the inequality about the affordability, and that it is the higher end consumers who have charging networks around them that have benefited the most.
By 2025, the next gen vehicle will be available. It will be stylish, it will be functional, it will have the performance that everybody loves from an EV, and more importantly, the price will be right for these entrenched customers that never intend to spend more than $25,000. The next gen platform from Tesla will vaporize that resistance.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we definitely saw that most acutely in this survey. I think it's twofold. For one, EVs have always been sort of portrayed as it's for early adopters, or Tesla sort of set the narrative that they're these aspirational, pretty expensive vehicles. It has taken a while for EVs. They're so new still that there aren't many of them, or there's a perception that there aren't many of them on the used market, which would then bring prices down. And then there's also sort of an issue with trucks. Truck is a body style that Americans love. Only now are we seeing electric trucks, and so it's going to take some time before those trucks start entering into the used market. That may drive down prices. So right now, EVs are seen as sort of this unattainable type of transportation for low-income buyers. And it's not just the products, like you said, it's access to charging infrastructure. In our survey, we found that a number of people, of lower-income shoppers, could not identify or did not notice or know of charging infrastructure in their community. And that's certainly a big hurdle because if we want these to be adopted nationwide, it cannot just be something for higher-income communities.
Finally, David, we've been talking a lot about Tesla opening up their charging network and whether that, in fact, sets the standard, the NACS, which Tesla has, versus the CCS. Does it ultimately matter which standard there is? Because at the end of the day, there's just not enough chargers out there, right?
True. There's certainly not enough chargers. I don't know if it'd be better to ask an engineer what the difference between the specific charging standard. We're in a sort of VHS versus Betamax moment. And as long as they just pick one and the automakers adopt that, I think it will make things easier for consumers. They don't have that issue of, okay, I'm driving this EV, but I'm pulling into this supercharging station. Is my EV going to be able to plug into the Tesla network? I will say, Tesla, they've certainly done a great job, whether it's 18,000 supercharging stations. And not only are there's certainly a large number of them, but they're also reliable. I think if you talk to people who own EVs, they're not Teslas and they're using other charging networks, there's a lot of pain points in those charging networks themselves. So to adopt Tesla's standard and to give other brands access to the supercharging is really going to make it a lot easier for consumers.
You motherfucking right. Not only are they reliable, but if you just look at the plugs, you would rather use the NACS versus that CCS bulky adapter. It's a no-brainer. And though the plugs don't really matter, it's what's behind the plug. What is that charging station like? How reliable is it? How much power does it have? Is it efficient? In conclusion, Tesla China sales sag temporarily. BYD aims to capture more of the market share of the internal combustion engine. Tesla delivers to other regions of the globe. India is undoubtedly right around the corner. FISKER'S product vision day filled with a lot of optimism. Nikola passes the buck to a new CEO. GM and EVgo trying to do their part to alleviate some of this infrastructure problem with EV charging. And Toyota doesn't want to be left out in the EV market in China. Something tells me that they will not be very successful over there. Well, that's all I got for you today. Be easy. Peace.